Hello and welcome to Alive and Composing the Wonderful World of Innova with today's guest, Bora Yoon. Would you please state your name for the record?
Sure. I'm Bora Yoon, and I'm a sound artist, composer, performer, and vocalist.
Good, well thank you for watching. Next week we'll be back with someone else. Oh, you said so much there in like a very encapsulated form. But your work and your life and your music are kind of universal and inclusive. You're very good at encapsulating things, is that true?
Hopefully. Yeah.
But you make music, you make art, you put on performances that are kind of surprisingly concrete, like kitchen implements in the cathedral. Is that a fair juxtaposition of something very intimate and quotidian with the universal, the sacred, and the architectural?
I think that every object or instrument has the ability to speak a different language, and I like putting all the different sounds together in different ways to just tell a story. And sometimes that can be finding how an instrument can be played in two different ways, or how something that is from the kitchen can be repurposed in a way that can have like a gestural meaning or a joke, or almost even maybe a ceremonious type of thing in a different type of space. So I don't know, I really always look for the double meaning in instruments, and how even though there's a set way to play it, how you can play it another way.
Did no one tell you what the constraints of the instrument ought to be? Like you play the piano on the keyboard and the vocals are just beautiful singing tone, or was there like a John Cage moment when he said, damn it, everything's available, let's use it all?
Yeah, well, there definitely was. I mean, I think, growing up and learning all of the technical stuff and pedagogy and, how you should do things is, what do they say? Know the rules before you break them, right? So I think there was a crap ton of learning the rules, and then there was a moment where I was like, well, why don't we just start mucking with it and messing with people, and messing with instruments. And really it just starts from the fact that I have perfect pitch, and I'm a music nerd, and I just, the radiator would be going, I'm like, the radiator's in A flat, which goes with this thing. And I would just start putting objects together just because they were pitched. So a lot of it, first started just from like how to tonally pair things up, and then eventually all those things have a gestural way to play them. So then I started thinking about the Michel Gondry logic of how things look versus sound, or what they mean, and how there's kind of a very synergistic language that can happen with that. So that's kind of where it started to really break apart.
Cast your mind back. What's your first sound memory?
Sound memory. I think probably thunderstorms. I don't know, I have a great affinity for them. And apparently they say that I'm a May babies. I was born in May. It's the first sound that you hear, and that's kind of why you love them. Because I've always wondered, like my whole life, like I've always been attracted to thunder. I should probably be scared of it, but I like it. And I think that's probably my earliest sound memory, which is why I think I gravitate towards, certain, whether it's distant but kind of, ominous, but just evocative sounds like that.
And where was that thunderstorm? Where was that? Where were you born?
I was born in Chicago. Yeah, so returning back to the Midwest.
Okay, so the windy city. Wind may come back into your music at some point in your life, maybe.
Yeah, actually there's a lot of wind in my music already. I've noticed that, so I use a mic that's kind of a lavalier right here, and I usually go, even the choral piece, there's always this moment of I always like to make a sound, like a sandscape or a landscape of sound of wind, and then put something really grainy next to the ear, and so you can start making that paradox of proximity and where are you, and maybe actually that it's a surreal space that you're constructing in the studio. So.
If you hadn't ended up as a sound artist, composer, performer, what would you have done with your life? alternative career?
I think I would be an acupuncturist and I'd be making jewelry. I don't know. But those are kind of the two things that I do, I gravitate towards.
Do you still do those in your hobby time?
Acupuncture really fascinates me, and I think that it informs a lot of how I keep doing what I'm doing. I'm fascinated by how, on a completely different system than Western medicine, that there are ways to revive your energy in your body and understanding your meridians differently. I think that would always be with me. I think it's something that keeps me alive, or it keeps my awareness of my body and just my, where I am in space alive.
And your early musical experiences, were they in the church? Were they singing? Were you playing other musical instruments? How did you develop your interests?
Yeah, super way back, it was just like the normal Asian upbringing stuff, like piano and Suzuki violin, orchestra, and then when I started choir, that was really when I first fell in love with like the entirety of choral music and just this feeling of, a really linear line and a very vertical line happening at the same time. So that's really where it started for me, I think, and I had a lot of the, I was very grateful to know all these other instruments too, because then it helps with knowing how to compose for other instruments and having that kind of harmonic background. So that's really the foundation piece of everything.
Were you composing from that stage, or were you a performer who moved into that later on?
I really believe that composing is captured improvisation. And I've been improvising since I was like 5 or 6 on the piano. I would just go to the piano and just play something that I thought sounded good, and I'd muck around. And so I don't know if you'd call it composing, but it's really, I think I've been always, trying to find a song whenever. I think the first thing I actually wrote down was in high school. So that's when I first wrote my first choral piece and my first string quartet. But I think improvising has always been with me, and that's really where I think songwriting and where a lot of these, the noodlings that then become the song bass line or the comping, that's it all starts from there. So
can you tell me about a significant experience that you had, kind of one of those life-changing performances or artistic eureka moments, when you saw a gallery exhibition, or you walked into a building, or you looked at a painting, or you read a poem, or attended a performance? Was there something that just really blew you away and you were never the same again?
Yeah, I've had a lot of those, but I can't think of them right now. Hold on. Life-changing musical experiences. I remember seeing Agora, which was at the bottom of a giant 55,000 square foot pool in Brooklyn. I kept hearing about it from all my friends, and everyone's like, "You've got to see this, it's really weird, it's in this abandoned pool, and there's all these people running around, there's music, and there's dance," and I went there on the very last day that it closed, and it was unbelievable. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was like performance with the entire idea of proscenium blown out of the water, where everything was experiential, everything was behind you, in front of you. It was not meant to be captured, it was meant to be felt. And that really changed a lot of how I started to think about performance and about music, that it shouldn't just be a presentation that comes to you from the stage to the audience and just a very bi-directional thing. It could be something that was all-encompassing and something that could seriously transport you. And another performance I saw also that was like that was Meredith Monk's Songs of Ascension. That was at the Guggenheim, where the audience started at the bottom of the spiral rotunda, and the performance is happening all above in the spiral. The second half, everyone broke up and went in little parties up the spiral. There were little vignettes and scenes everywhere. And then the third part, everyone was at the top looking straight down, and all the performers were lying on the ground and singing upwards. And this idea of traveling performance, this idea of really taking a space and making it dimensional, changed my life and changed how I really work with music and space.
Which brings to mind the title Sunken Cathedral. Does that relate somehow to a big giant tank of water?
Yeah, well, sunken, yeah, very much so. Cathedral, I've been singing in church spaces and sacred spaces for a long time as a singer in New York. And I always love how cathedrals are, they're actually they are architecturally metaphoric to the body, and also to all the different chambers and little hallways and corridors and things have a metaphor for a larger kind of organism that's working, because it's about a building that breathes. It's about the circulation of people coming in, out, looking up, looking down, having this sense of ascension, essentially, in a stationary place, right? And I really, from all the site-specific work that I would do, I really like this idea of taking an architectural space and resonating it like an instrument and finding what type of space or what kind of melodies live in different spaces, different hours of day, different hours of night. All of these ideas that are alive very much in liturgical music, or even in ragas in Indian music. This idea that certain chants are for dawn, or that this raga is for sunset, that this medieval chant is for a certain time of day, or the Vespers are at night. I was really taken by that idea, because I do think that I have radically different thoughts at night than when I do during the day. It's weird. Or composing is so much easier in the middle of the night, I have to say, than in the middle of the day. And I always think about where and how does music live in different spaces, different times. And how can we create an album that, can slice time and space, and this idea of centuries, or this idea of contemporary music into a large circle? Because very much like when you walk into a church today and get transported, how can you listen to a piece of music and still be transported to a different time, but still be present?
Can you talk a little bit about how that transportation works? Because in a live setting, you would perform this in a large sacred space, for instance, but it's also something that can be heard on a CD, a very nice CD, and an LP, a vinyl, a beautiful handmade vinyl piece, both on innova and a graphic album format, and it's going to be a staged theatrical work. And what is different about listening to this in the comfort or squalor of your own home versus going to see you do it?
I think that, well, all the phases of Sunken Cathedral have been made very medium specific to how you're going to listen to it. The CD is a completely different order than the LP, because you're usually listening to the CD in a car, or perhaps in your iPod on a train, and you're moving, and you're not really going to be tending to it or sitting with it like you would an LP, where you have to turn it over every 3 tracks, and you have that nice experience of being able to drop the needle on the record and have that kind of satisfying tactile reaction of gesture to sound. And on the gralbum, we add one more dimension. So it really builds on this idea, just like in performance of musical architecture, this idea of adding, so the record is the blueprint. And then as each format builds out, a new dimension gets added. So from the digital version or the CD, the LP brings in the kind of the tactile and the time-based factor of kind of sitting there with it, and it's very much an art object or design object. And then the gralbum itself then turns the record into adds the element of visuals and moving image to it, and also the sense of kind of shifting linear time.
We should mention what a gralbum is.
Yes. A gralbum is a graphic album, very much like a graphic novel. So it's the idea of taking an album and making it visual, because we live in such an increasingly visual age right now, where everything is multisensory or audiovisual. And so we wanted to bring together this idea of a music video with the idea of also an album that you could swipe through like a literary book that you can on iPad. So there's 2 ways to look and experience a gralbum, which is one that's like a linear render, that's like a film that goes by, it's a normal music video. Or there's a way you can pinch the entire frame and control how the audio and the moving images line up to each other, and all of the lyrics for the songs themselves appear as well. And so you control your own experience, like an audiovisual poetry book, essentially. It's new, and I really think it's the future of music, just because it is tactile, it's visual, it kind of lives in this in-between space where I think music lives anyway, between genres and between disciplines, and really brings together the audience to have an immersive experience with it. And lastly, it's all turning into a big old multimedia show that's going to tour, and that's premiering in January 2015 with Beth Morrison Project and Here Art Center. It's going to be premiering at the Prototype Festival at La Mama Theater in New York. And yeah, I'm really, really excited to see all these elements from the record, the LP, the album come together, then live on stage. And that's really where you get the gestural and the full dimensional performance of it, where that Michel Gondry logic of objects and actions and music all come together in this very whimsical, kind of haunted house of sound that slowly comes alive. Things are not what they seem. Playing with this idea that every musical instrument has two ways of being used. There's when you walk into the house and you think it's normal, and then slowly things start to deconstruct and things start to become other things. And we kind of go around the clock hours from midnight to dusk, to dawn, and just kind of live through the night together, by going through the chambers of the subconscious and the mind and all the places your mind goes in the course of an evening, to return back to the same house but changed, which is what Sunken Cathedral is all about, just transmuting.
We look forward to visiting, dropping in, listening, all of the ways we can possibly interact with you and Sunken Cathedral. Thanks very much, Bora.
Thank you.